On.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning and welcome to the March 18th Citizen Oversight Board meeting. We have a rich agenda today, including some guests that we haven't had in our meeting, at least as long as I've been on the board, the Denver Fire Department. So really excited to hear from the department and just kind of understand more you know, how you're organized, what you're up to, what your priorities are, and just get to know you a little bit more. For the rest of our agenda, we've got a couple of just general board updates, and we'll actually start there. So first, if we can move into approval of the minutes. If folks have had a chance to read those.
So moved.
Great. Got a second from Larry. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion passes. Thank you. I know that was a robust meeting. Second point of updates for both the community and the board. So last week we sent out a request for proposals for recruiting firm services to help with the ongoing recruitment of the monitor. We expect, we demanded proposals resubmitted or are submitted today. I think there were 6 or 7 firms on that list, and we've already gotten a couple back. So wanted to know if there were any board members who were interested in reviewing those proposals and helping to select the firm that will support. Great.
I'll review them too.
Okay. So I forget what time I said they were due today, but I'll forward them along. They're usually, 10 pages. It's a fairly standard scope of work. So, I'll forward some information about, what we asked for and what we can expect back. So thank you for that. My hope is to get to selection by next Friday, as I expect contracting to take a couple of weeks. We are also working with OIM to ensure that we've got budget allocated. So there's some budget mechanics that we have to work through with the office, but that should be fine. I'm also in the process of soliciting members of the selection committee. So we've gotten person identified from the mayor's office. We are working to get a justice involved individual, and I've got some candidates for that. And then the rest, I think, are pretty self-explanatory and self-selecting based on title. So that's all good news there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, the last item for general discussion is that we've got a quarterly public forum, March 23rd, which is next week. And our proposed agenda for that meeting is just, general board updates, board membership changes. So we're, some board members are rolling off and we've got some new members. So introducing those new members, give an update on the monitor hiring process, and then really work through our annual report, findings and recommendations. In addition to some data about the police response to the George Floyd protests and work that the Public Safety Department is doing to implement that. And then finally, just to highlight our 2022 priorities. So what are we going to be working on and what are we interested in? I know Daniel was planning to reach out to board members to present some of the findings from the annual report and other information. So if that hasn't happened yet, that will happen. Hoping that more board members can be in the lead seat for that quarterly public forum. A couple of other items. So thank you all for helping to approve, review, edit our annual report. I think it's a particularly strong report, and I think it's something that we can be proud of putting forward. And for Daniel's first cycle at this. I think he did a great job and deserves a lot of recognition for herding the cats that we
Absolutely.
all are. So good job, Daniel. That is no small task. So putting any words on a page you can get 9 people to agree to is, is really something. So thank you for that and great work. 2 other items. So we have an opportunity to present the report to the City Council Safety Committee on April 13th, 20th, or 27th. That meeting is Wednesdays between 10:30 and noon. So if any board members are interested in presenting as part of that, let me know and we can find a date of those 3 dates that work best. And then lastly,
Julia, are you gonna do that? Are you gonna be there too?
Yeah, for sure. If you all don't want to do it, I will do it.
No. Oh, no, but I thought if somebody, no, I wasn't, yeah, sorry. Sorry for the misunderstanding. I just didn't know if you were gonna be there as chair, even if somebody else was
Of course.
there.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I was asking.
Yeah. And then lastly, NACOL is accepting session proposals for this year's September conference. The deadline is a month from now, April 15th. And so if you've got a session that you'd like to propose, please reach out to Daniel with details there. I don't have any ideas, so if you all are aching to talk about something, I'm thrilled to hear it. Okay, Daniel, did I miss anything on okay, kind of a round robin. Well, with that, we will turn it over to our Denver Fire Department colleagues. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves. And I know we sent over some kind of basic questions. So if you've got materials you'd like to present in advance of those questions, that's great. If you cover the question, just highlight that was a question that we submitted. So participants on the call today will know. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Desmond Fulton, and I'm chief of the Denver Fire Department. And I believe this is the first time we've had a chance to meet. And I'm excited. I'm excited to share all the wonderful things that the Denver Fire Department is doing. We've got incredible men and women that serve selflessly each and every day. So I'm excited to give you all a little bit of background on what we do. With me, I've got the Deputy Chief of Denver Fire, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves here. So.
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Kathleen Friedenberg. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Denver Fire Department. Nice to see you all this morning.
Good morning. My name is Wendy Motor, and I'm the Division Chief of the Administration Division. Thank you for having us today.
We do have a PowerPoint, so we can put together a few slides just so we can have an opportunity to kind of share who we are and what we're doing. So we're going to pull that up real quick here. Can everyone see it okay?
Yes.
Okay. Our mission statement, I won't read everything verbatim, but the vision statement, I will, if you would not mind. The Denver Fire Department is a nationally accredited organization built on a rich history of tradition, continuously leading to emergency response, community engagement, and wellness, embracing a caring culture built on a foundation of respect, inclusion, and trust. Continuously leading the fire service through innovative practices with a focused attention to our family and yours. The reason I wanted to read that is we had an employment engagement survey that we sent to over 1,000 of our members last year. And it was from the feedback from that survey that we built this vision statement. It's not a statement from just the leadership, it's a statement from everyone on our department. It includes many words that are indicative of what and who we are as an organization. And we wrap it up with the focused attention to our family and yours. And with that, we as firefighters, our schedule is a little bit different than a traditional work schedule. We work 24-hour shifts. So we are with the men and women that we work with just as much as we are our families on our off days. So 9 days a month, to 10 days a month, depending on the cycle, we are working 24 hours a day. So we have truly that family mentality. So I wanted to just take a moment to share a little bit about our work schedule. We are ISO and accredited department. We became accredited in 2018 through SIPSI, and we have an ISO rating of 1. This is something I'm very proud of. There are only 101 departments across the entire country that can say that they are nationally accredited as well as have an ISO rating of 1. To you, that means many things. Number one, it means we are the most prepared of any agency possible. The second thing is that allows the city to pass on extensive breaks on your insurance rates for businesses and for homeowners because of that ISO and ISO 1 and that accreditation rating. A little bit about our structure. We are budgeted for 1,072 positions. We have myself, and then looking over financial services and also public information and outreach programs. We are very, very vested in the community, and we do a lot when it comes to community outreach and engagement. The deputy chief of the department, Kathleen Friedenberg, oversees 6 divisions. We have our operations division, which you would be most probably interested in the fact that they're the engines and the fire trucks and rescues that you see on the streets. Districts 2 through 7 touch all aspects of the city. We also perform fire protection for other cities. We protect Inglewood, we protect Glendale, we protect Skyline, and Sheridan. And then finally, we do have a wildland team. We have the largest team in the state of Colorado with over 200 women and men that participate in our wildland fire team. We also have members that are part of USAR, Colorado Task Force 1, and the largest hazmat response team in the state of Colorado. We also have our fire prevention division, which is in charge of inspecting, doing all the life safety inspections for every business in the city and county of Denver. Also looking at the patio expansions, conveyances being elevators and escalators, everything that has to do with marijuana and anything to do with life safety, they're in charge of. Technical services. We actually have our own dispatchers in the 911 center, communications and line shop. Most of the things we have communication and technology wise are built from our own experts, and we continually maintain our own facilities. So if you see facility maintenance up there, when you think of maintenance, when there's something that if you got a leaking sink or a lawn that needs mowed or painting, we take care of all that ourselves at a significant cost savings to the citizens. Administrative and investigations, we've got fire investigations, our Human Resources Bureau, IntelliStaff, Internal Affairs, OEM liaison to civil service, which is not on there. And then finally, admin oversees our recruitment efforts. Safety and training, we've got a very robust wellness program, one of the best wellness programs across the entire country. Safety and training also oversees not only the wellness side, but new hire training. All of our new hire academies go through our own fire academy, the Denver Fire Academy, and we have an incumbent training center there as well. And then finally, the airport, which we refer to as DEN, which is really a city within a city. We have all of the fire protection and dispatching and all the ARF support units for everything that the FAA requires. Went back. Just a little bit of data on us. Last year, the Denver Fire Department responded to a little over 125,000 calls. 65% of those calls were EMS in nature. Of those types of calls, we had about a little over 13,000 that were auto accidents. And of the 125,000 calls, 5,700 were fire related in some capacity. Internal affairs, again, please. Yes.
All right, so I'm going to step in on this one and give you some information about internal affairs. Our Internal Affairs Bureau runs very similarly to how most internal affairs in the city run, in that we have our unit who would receive any kind of concern or any kind of complaint and commendations in our case as well. And with that, we would gather information and make a decision about whether or not this could be a type of concern that maybe it's just questions regarding what we would call a service concern, which is why do you park your fire rigs near the grocery store entrance, or why are you so loud going through our neighborhood? Those type of concerns we would send as a supervisory review and could send out to the divisions so that they're giving the most accurate information and answers to their questions. Then the other cases that would be considered maybe to need more investigation, internal affairs will hold themselves. They handle all interviews, any recordings, any document procurement, so that they get a full investigation together. And then with that information, it is either a sustained or not sustained incident. If it were a sustained incident, internal affairs would facilitate its process through our discipline process. So for us, what a discipline process or our caseload looks like would be handling the case with close oversight and daily conversations with the Executive Director of Safety's office and the City Attorney's office. We have a very defined discipline matrix, which works very well for us. It's been in place since 2017. In that matrix, we have very defined rules, and we have specifics on levels of seriousness and where those rules would sit. And then based off of whether or not it's a sustained type of complaint, a presumptive discipline for what the outcome would be for the sustained cases. Go ahead and feel free to add, both of you add more information if I'm missing something. So to give you some information about how we would handle commendations and complaints. Next, the other way. The other way. So you should probably know some more about us and what our purpose is when we respond to emergencies. It's a little bit different potentially than other agencies you may be used to. When we respond to emergencies, it is to keep people safe and protect their property. We are most often the first emergency response that they receive when they're having a medical emergency. It also, we help problem solve with the type of emergencies that maybe there's no other defined agency for it, and that could be somebody stuck in a very high place, somebody is stuck in a confined space, somebody has had a bad accident and need help being removed from their vehicle safely. So the bottom line is the majority of our responses have to do with us helping people solve their problem without judgment. And so with that, to be honest, we don't get very many complaints. But that being said, it's really important to us as a department because we recognize our primary responsibility in all of this is that we are caring for our communities and that we are doing that in a very public facing way, in a very transparent way. So we created an online process which is very simple and very easy to access through denvergov.org, where you can go to create a commendation or a complaint for any of our members. And this is twofold for us. It sometimes is not easy to have mutual communication, especially if a member of the public would like to tell one of our people that they did a great job or a crew did a great job at a call. So for them to be able to communicate to us directly, go ahead and go back. Someone did very well. We like to reward that. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to get that information directly. This also, we've discovered, of course, we receive some complaints, which I'll discuss in a minute, but we also receive a lot of questions. We identified a lot of our public wants to know more about things related to fire code, and some of it doesn't even relate to us, like questions regarding my neighbor has a giant barbecue on their balcony in my multifamily housing, and I want to know if that's okay for them to have that. So it's created us to have the ability to have two links. When you move through the commendation and complaints section, it lets you choose between a commendation or complaint for a member, or maybe it's a fire code issue. And so we've been able to open communications more effectively with the community to answer those type of questions. And then if it were, go ahead and switch to the next one. If it were to be a complaint, the way that we have it processed is you would go directly to this would be what you would get if you had a complaint. There'd be two responses if it was a commendation or a complaint. Commendation is basically saying, your submission is complete and we will make sure that they and their supervisor through the chain of command will be informed about your appreciation for what they're doing. This one would be if someone were to forward a concern, they would go through the information, give all the details that are pertinent to what's happening with their incident, and then they would get this response saying that within 5 business days, we will make sure that your concern is forwarded to the correct division, or it will stay with internal affairs depending on the circumstances. That way we're making sure it's being handled properly through either the division or through internal affairs, depending on what's happening. And also Chief Fulton already alluded to the fact that we have a different work schedule, so we have to take that into account a little bit. That's why it's 5 days. Then after that, it informs them that you have an additional 5 days that we give the division to investigate the incident, get more information about what happened, and then get back with internal affairs officially with a disposition about what the result of their inquiry was. Then we allow for an additional 5 days for internal affairs or the division head to contact the person with the concern and give them a disposition as to what happened. That being said, there's also the understanding that sometimes there are circumstances in which internal affairs may take longer, because we all know if you have an internal affairs investigations, there's way more detail to it. So we have written in there, if that's the case, we do everything we can to have a result to the person with the concern within 30 days. So Chris, can I ask you to go back to the original IA graph? One more, that one. So we put this in here just so that you can get it kind of a taste of what our numbers are looking like. This is 2021 summary, and you can see in this pie chart what our cases look like. So in total, cases that were sustained, we had 19% of those cases result in a verbal reprimand. 18% resulted in a written reprimand. 16% resulted in what we call a contemplation of disciplinary action, which is any type of discipline that would be above a written, and that could include anything from suspension, fines, loss of rank, loss of or termination. And that would go through a different routing system, which would include a conduct review board, a pre-disciplinary meeting, an additional conduct review board recommendation phase, which would go through to the chief of the department, and then eventually the director of safety's office. And I'm sure we can talk about that more later. And then in the end, 44% of the cases from last year were found to be unfounded or not sustained. And a lot of that has to do with members of the community just needing to know more, a better explanation for why we did what we did. So there's that.
Did you want to discuss the auto?
Yes, thank you very much. So moving forward, when I talked to you about how when they'd make the submission on our web-based commendation and complaint site, what would happen is they would receive this, your submission is complete. Then within 30 minutes, they'd receive an additional email from us confirming we have received your complaint and it is in process. That way we're making sure that they understand, we know we have it, and it's, the 5 days have started. And that's primarily internal affairs.
Yeah, go back to the main screen where it has the data, so I can clarify some questions. You did pose a question on wanting some general information about the responsibilities of the fire department, and I'd be remiss if I didn't speak to some new programs and innovative ways that we are operating. First, to give you a little bit of background, we do have 39 firehouses that are strategically located throughout the city, all of them in particular areas, not only because we are part of the communities that we serve, but also allows us to make a 4-minute response to any type of 911 call. We follow an IAFF curriculum, and our goal is to have the 911 call taker have the information in totality and dispatched it as far as the emergency goes within 1 minute and 30 seconds. Once we get the call in that firehouse, we have 1 minute to get on that apparatus with all of our safety gear, and then we have 4 minutes to get to the scene. So we are very proud of our response times, and that's something that we are very, very good at, and we are always in a higher percentile with that. We operate with engines and trucks. The engines are the ones you see that have the fire hose that is on display here on this particular screen. Those are the individuals that would be putting the fires out. The truck companies, if you will, are the ones with the ladders. Those are the individuals that would be opening the doors, making their way into the fire, and actually searching for victims and pulling victims out. When people call 911, if the 911 dispatchers don't know what to do or who to send that call to, those come to us. So many times we respond on anything and everything. You've heard the analogy or the jokes of us saving cats and trees. That's true, that happens. We also unlock people's cars if their cars are running, or maybe they've locked the car, their child is in the back seat in a child safety restraint system. We will gain access into houses if people are locked out and they have medicines inside. Obviously, auto extrications for accidents, any type of medical emergency, but really anything out of the ordinary. If people don't know who to call, they're calling us because we're really good at solving problems. A few other things that are very innovative that we are operating with is we've got what's called a medical unit. And medical units are allowing us, because of the increased growth of the city and the increased number of 911 calls, everyone that calls 911 needs help, but sometimes they're not quite sure of what kind of help they need. Some of these calls are what we consider lower acuity types of calls that we don't really need a fire truck or a fire engine or an ambulance or all the above there. Maybe they're having some issues with mental capacity. They need help mentally. Maybe they're having issues with resources. Maybe there's some sort of an addiction and they need help with that addiction. We need to find better ways and innovative ways to get people the help that they truly need and best utilize the resources in place. We have what's called a co-responder program now. And what that co-responder program does is it actually gives us the opportunity to go to these people's houses that are calling for help, but they really don't need emergent fire department help, but they need help in some other capacity. Our co-responders respond to these individuals. They find out truly what their needs are, and we put them in contact with the agencies in the city that can best help them. Another innovative way that we're responding is again, I referenced our med units. They're going on lower acuity types of calls. So rather than sending a fire truck or engine on something that can be dealt with at that lower level with the EMT, where maybe it's something like someone that's having a seizure or someone that is in medical need, but it's not high acuity, such as a shooting, a stabbing, or cardiac arrest. It allows us to better utilize our resources. So we're sending our fire trucks and engines to the types of high acuity calls where we can make more of it, have more of an impact. We are very public outward facing. We have an incredible recruitment program. We have come, I feel that we've really come around when it comes to many things, the way we approach things in the city. Just like everyone, we're doing more with less. We've had some issues with staffing. We've had some issues with many things that we're all facing as communities. But the one thing that I would like to express is that we're very good at what we do, and we're very innovative, and we're very proud to serve each and every one of you as citizens each and every day in the city, county of Denver.
So you alluded to staffing and recruitment, and that is a question.
Yes.
Chief Motor, would you want to address that?
Do you want me to go into
Please.
recruitment?
Sure.
Okay. So the Denver Fire Department strives to continue to recruit and retain members that reflect those that we serve in our community. We have 2 recruiters right now. One is a captain, a female captain, and one is a Latino lieutenant male. And we also have 1 vacancy right now. Between the 2 of them, they have worked extremely hard over the last few years, really trying to bring our recruitment team and our efforts. We're always improving all the time, but we're always improving our processes. But part of what our recruiting team does is they're very proactive in the community. They're out in the community trying to recruit, and so they go to different events. They go to CrossFit events. They go to career days at high schools and colleges. They go to different parades. They participate in Read Across America. They participate in public safety job fairs, veteran jobs fairs, and that's just a very tiny picture of what they participate in between the 2 of them, excuse me, and some other firefighters that continue to help. We also partner with Denver Police Department and the Denver Sheriff's Department in the bigger community events, such as the Black Arts Festival, Cinco de Mayo, Juneteenth, the powwow that's happening this weekend, and that's just to name a few. So we try to partner with our other safety agencies and to be out in the public more as a safety team rather than just the fire department. So we're always trying to figure out new ways to recruit and with other department agencies. Recruiting also offers mentoring for the written test. If there's individuals that are having issues with certain part of the test or just the written test as a whole, they provide mentoring sessions for individuals, either on a one-on-one basis or in a group setting. They also do pre-academy sessions for hands-on. So those people that are interested in the fire department who have never handled a saw or a pike pole or a ladder, it gives them the opportunity to get hands-on before they start the academy. So they're going in with some knowledge and with some quote unquote training, if you will. They also do training sessions for the CPAT, which is the Candidate Physical Ability Test. And that is the test that candidates need to take and pass when they come on part of the testing process before they get on the fire department. So they do practice sessions for that, and that's the physical agility test. They also do physical fitness on weekends. So they'll meet at different locations, such as Red Rocks. They'll run stairs or do different types of workouts at Red Rocks. And obviously it's all volunteer, but they offer those to individuals to try to get into a workout regimen and to try to get, into full shape before they start the fire academy. They also do education sessions with the community. One of the things that we actually did last year that was the first time that we've done it before is pre-academy workshop for women that were in the testing process and that were going to be in the academy classes. And we partnered with the FRE, which is Firefighters Incorporated for Racial Equality, and the Women Firefighter of Denver's. So it was for women only, but we also had partnerships with those two organizations. And it was a very successful event. In fact, Chief Friedenberg was out there as well. And it gave women the opportunity to really have hands-on and train with other women in ladders and equipment that really takes the technique for somebody in maybe a smaller stature, and just learn those techniques and really get hands-on before they start the academy so we can set them up for success. I just want to give you a little bit of some stats for the last couple of classes that we had. So our last class was 2101. We had 24 members in that class. 8 were females, 16 were males, which gave us a percentage of 42% that identify with a different race and ethnicity. 8 of those were from our public safety cadet program. And I won't get into that. I don't know if you guys know about that, but if you do, I can certainly answer questions at the end about that. The most recent class that we hired, this is the most diverse class I think that we've had so far. And Chief Fulton, if you will, you can speak to that as well. We have 9 females and 27 males. We have a total of 36 members in the class right now. That gives us a percentage of 63% that identify with different race and ethnicity, and 25% are females. And very proud that we were able to bring in a class of such diversity because our goal is to make sure our fire department reflects the community that we serve. And so I'm very excited about the class that we have in right now, and six of those are public safety cadets. So that's kind of a very broad overview of our recruitment program. So I can answer any questions afterwards.
Real quick, if I may, I just want to interject. I believe that diversity in the fire service is probably one of the biggest challenges in the fire service across the country. And one thing that I am passionate about is making sure that we look through that lens of equity and make sure that we give everyone the opportunity to be part of this wonderful organization. We approach everything with intent and make sure that we are not just in the community, but we're actively part of the community. And part of the mission and vision of this department, like Chief Motor spoke to, is not only mirroring the citizens that we serve, but making sure that these young boys and girls of color have an opportunity to be part of this wonderful organization. And we do this in many ways. And one example is we have what's called a youth leadership camp, something that we started 6 years ago. And it gives us an opportunity to plant that seed of opportunity. We have the ability for one group of just young females to go to a camp for 3 days, and then the following week is a co-ed group. But it gives us a chance to interact with these young adults. All of the men and women on our job get a chance to share what we do and really plant that seed. And I truly believe that it's those opportunities when someone has a chance to work around and be part of a program that builds up their self-esteem, builds up their leadership, that makes them feel valued and appreciated, which is what we do as an organization, will allow us to continue to grow and look through that lens of equity, and in the future continue to look like with the communities that we serve.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So Chief Fulton alluded to the obstacle of us making sure that we are creating a fire family that reflects that of our community. And I might as well just touch on the rest of the obstacles. We could probably go on all day about what we perceive as could be an obstacle, but there's just a couple of things that I think are worthwhile to make sure you know. We kind of fall in line with the rest of the country when it comes to retention and recruiting. I think that it's just common right now that people are reevaluating what they want out of their career, and this career comes with some level of risk. So that creates, a constant push for us to retain people and recruit people that is reflective of our community. Another thing that is things that we are a challenge for us is making sure that we are managing and doing the excellent job that we usually do with response to calls, increased call volume, and doing that with a limited budget and limited resources. And I know that we're going to be speaking about fire investigations, so that one undertone challenge that we'll be working through in the near future is the fact that we are going to be losing our accelerants detection canine this summer, and we'll be having a little lag before our new canine gets up and running. But the handler for Cora is retiring, so we're going to be having a new team come up soon. So with that, I'll answer your question related to the Fire Investigations Unit and what their primary responsibilities are. So you could probably just take this
Yeah, I
off
think we're done
because I
with
think we're done. So the Fire Investigations Unit, they investigate fires, explosions, false alarms, the construction or use of incendiary material or devices. So for that, an example I would give you would be like a Molotov cocktail, where you use a device to encapsulate an accelerant as a capsule to move it and accelerate a fire. So those are the primary things that arson would respond on. The criteria for which they would respond is if a fire is an unknown cause, if there's property damage, and or if there is suspect information. Additionally, with the unit, we also liaison with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms department, and we have 2 task force officers who, first of all, we have 2 ATF members who work part-time out of our office so that we are able to work in concert for the type fires that would meet the criteria for ATF response. A lot of that has to do with interstate commerce. That way we can have access to some of their resources, and it's a good mutual partnership that we have working with that agency. And then we have anointed 2 task force officers who are our investigators, who have the ability to get training from ATF, and they can also respond to calls outside of Denver, just to increase our experience with large-scale incidents and bring that experience back to our own investigators. One of those TFO officers is our accelerants detection canine handler, and they use Cora for incidents in Denver, but also incidents outside of Denver, so she can get a lot of reps. Some things that may not be common knowledge about the Fire Investigations Unit is they have a lot of other responsibilities, and they're active in the community in that they house the Youth Fire Setter Intervention Program, now called the Youth Fire Stop Program. And that's a program in which a intervention is created for youth who misuse fire. It creates an intervention in that we are working in a diversion program to keep them out of the criminal tracking system and divert them to an intervention that keeps them from having a criminal history when this could be something more where it's requiring some counseling or family counseling or education. So the second component to the Youth Fire Center is an educational class that's provided. Also, out of the Fire Investigations Unit, we run the educational smoke trailer. This trailer is used for community events, and it is also used historically in concert with Simply Safe, who is a program through Denver Public Schools, where we provide fire safety education for about 20,000 kids per year. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years, it has slowed down because of remote learning and because of requirements for distancing. So unfortunately, the trailer sat for a bit and took on some water from a roof leak and is now full of mold. So we're working on getting a new trailer. Actually, we're working on trying to get a new tiny house. So we're hopeful to get that in the near future and get that up and running, because it's a huge opportunity for us to educate the public and to keep the conversation going about the importance of fire safety. And and one other part of the Fire Investigations Unit is they put on an annual seminar. It's the Advanced Fire Investigations Seminar, where we provide extended education on things like fire science, updated case law, and investigations related to origin and cause investigation. And that's opened up to the public agencies, but also to the privates, like private investigators for insurance companies.
There was this question that's arson related as well.
Oh, okay. So if you guys are, I'll start with number 6, just so we stay on fire investigations. So when it comes to fire investigators, they fall under what would be similar to, well, it falls under the Office of the Independent Monitor. Because this entity, they're such a group, they're into fire science and origin and cause investigation and evidence collection. They very rarely get complaints. In fact, I think I could name one that was between 4 or 5 years ago, and it actually came from the Independent Monitor, and we handled it as we're supposed to. It's common knowledge in internal affairs that if there is an investigator who receives a complaint, we immediately have the Office of the Independent Monitor involved. We communicate with them throughout the process, and then in a really timely manner, we provide them a disposition about the case. And then also, if we receive a complaint about a fire investigator and it didn't come from the Independent Monitor, we still let the Independent Monitor know that the complaint came in, so that we know it falls under their purview. So we make sure to communicate that right away.
Might as well answer 7 too.
Okay.
I see hands up, and I want to be respectful of that. We have one more question I don't believe we've addressed yet. So if
Yeah,
you
let's
don't
go
mind-
ahead and go through that quick, and then we can get to questions.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I think this is our last question on the list you supplied to us, and it's about do we keep data? The answer to that is yes. We have a software program that we use with its own server through the city that we keep track of all of our disciplines. The software allows us to put all of our recordings, all of our reports, case summaries, everything into one, and it is viewed by the chain of command, who's the need to knows, deputy chief, chief of the department, chief of administration, division chief of administration. Also, the city attorney has access to that, and so does the executive director of safety. So they have full view of whatever they need within that software program. And like I said, it's stored on its own server. Let's see, how many complaints do we receive in the average year? So last year, I can tell you we had 57 complaints. That was the total number that we received. And I can tell you for this year, they're sitting at number 24. And I would say about half of those were received from the web-based complaint accommodation system.
With that, we'll take a pause and please ask away. So I'll let you guys take over and
Thank you. And a lot to catch up on since we haven't met in a while. So it's helpful to
Yes,
just get the
yes.
overview. Thank you for that. I just wanted to clarify for community members who may be watching that the jurisdiction of the OIM and the COB over Denver Fire is both specific and quite broad. So the specific nature of our oversight relates to particularly the arson investigative unit, because those are commissioned officers who carry firearms, which is the specific designation for both OIM and COB. And then both, COB specifically is empowered to raise and address community concerns with the chief of fire. So that's the broad jurisdiction that we have. So thank you for that, right? We don't necessarily have oversight over your whole operation, and it's pretty specific in some cases. I wanted to say congrats on your accreditation. I have previously worked in a city that was working towards its accreditation. And for community members who might not know, you do not need accreditation to run a fire department. And when you pursue accreditation, it's a multi-year effort and quite challenging. So I understand what you undertook there, and you know, I'm proud to be a resident of a city that has that. So thank you for the work there. I wondered about two things. The first relates to your EMS, and wonder if you can answer a specific question and then a general question about that. So the specific question is that a capacity that's owned and run by Denver Fire, or is that outsourced? You know, is it a contracted arrangement? And then I am also wondering about your relationship with Denver Health in that EMS capability.
That is a great question, and I'm glad you asked that. Denver operates, we're what we would be considered a multi-tiered system. An example of a single-tiered system would be Chicago Fire. They have engines that have paramedics on the engines. They have ambulances that respond out of a firehouse. When a medical emergency comes in, you're getting an engine with EMTs and medics, as well as that ambulance with medics to transport the patient. Denver's a multi-tiered system. So every firefighter on the Denver Fire Department is an EMT. That's a requirement to be a member of the Denver Fire Department. We're all EMT basic level. And the next level of EMT, besides that, you can get additional certifications. An example of that would be IV certification. We get to most calls in that 4-minute time frame. So generally 9 times out of 10, we're very first on scene to provide basic life support. You're getting 4 EMTs off of an engine or a truck. We can control breathing. We can administer oxygen. We could treat for shock, do a full patient assessment. And then the way it's supposed to work on a multi-tier system is then Denver Health arrives within their 9-minute time frame. We're held to a 4-minute standard. They're held to a 9-minute standard. And then they're there for advanced life support. They can administer drugs. They can monitor EKGs, give other specific treatments such as dextrose, for instance, that we're not allowed to deliver. And then they can transport that patient if transport is needed. Again, it's multi-tiered. You know, we are looking at ways to expand. I think the system, the multi-tiered approach worked very well when it was first implemented. But Denver's grown significantly, right? I mean, a lot of us have been in this state and this city for a long time. I've been here for 52 years, and the traffic's incredible. All the growth is vertical. The density is amazing. So we're going on more and more calls, and we have difficulties with transport times. We don't transport. To answer your question specifically, that's contracted through Denver Health. They're the transport agency, and when they can't make the transport, they contract out and have agencies such as AMR, Norcan Ambulance, they would respond. The outlying agencies such as South Metro or West Metro, most everyone is a single-tiered system. They do their own transports. They used to come in Denver and assist with transports. They don't anymore. It's 100% on Denver Health and that contract. And the reason is because they're so busy now, they don't have the ability to come in and help Denver with medical transports. We do have arrangements for mutual aid. We've got great operating arrangements where if there's a significant wildland fire or a hazmat incident and they need us or we need them, We've got a very robust relationship with everyone surrounding us to assist with us on the fire emergency needs. I hope, does that answer your question? I didn't answer the relationship. Obviously, there's been a lot of media attention with relationships with Denver Health. And again, it's unfortunate that things are pushed out in the media. But, you know, to be quite frank and honest with you, I do believe that we can be better. And that's my goal as chief of this department. I owe that to each of one of you on this call to give you the best medical and fire delivery as possible. And if there's better ways to deliver service, if there's better ways to transport in a timelier fashion, if there's better ways to treat you in your times of need, I owe that to you to look through those lenses to give you the best delivery possible. So that is my goal and commitment to you, is making sure that we are the absolute, not just only accredited in ISO 1, but we look at ourselves each and every day and we strive for greatness, because you're never going to be great if you don't strive for it. So that is my goal and my dedication in that capacity.
Thank you. I think the other thing that really strikes me about, you know, urban fire departments is the fact that the majority of the work you do is not fighting fires, right? It's community risk reduction and harm reduction and things like that. So, you know, it's interesting that the name is fire, considering less than 5% of the work that you do is actually, you know, putting out flames. So thank you for that. And certainly, you know, it's something that we are thinking about. You know, that relationship with Denver Health and you know, subcontracted relationships among public safety organizations right now in particular. Sure. So thanks for highlighting that. Stefan, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Julia. First of all, I wanted to thank you and Denver Fire for your service, and you provide, you know, obviously outstanding service to our community and very much needed. I also wanted to congratulate Deputy Chief Brandenburg, who was just named Deputy Chief, I know, earlier this month, and first woman deputy, the highest ranking woman in the Denver Fire Department's history, 156-year history. So you should be commended, and it's a wonderful development and long overdue. My question is this, a couple questions. There are 57 complaints that you mentioned last year and 20-something this year. Those are all external complaints. Am I right? They come from the community, or are some of those internal complaints as well?
Well, last year was interesting. I would say about 15 to 20% came externally. The rest of it was internal. So I should clarify what internal and external means for us when we put into our software where it came from. Internal means that the complaint was generated from somewhere in the department, within our own department. External is every other source external to the Denver Fire Department. So that could be the web-based commendation complaint, or it could be, you know, other departments. It could be just anything external to the Denver Fire Department. So about 15% last year. This year so far, like I said, it's a little higher, but it always kind of levels out at the end of the year that it came from the web-based external complaint.
So the majority of the complaints are internal.
Yeah, you should know something about us. We police ourselves pretty tightly. Yeah, we're right now working really hard towards officer development, accountability, and our job is, I believe, doing a good job in the as it relates to accountability and making sure that everybody's doing what they should be doing. So it doesn't surprise me that those are the numbers.
Thank you for that clarification. Obviously, something that we've all been living with, and the chief, you know, alluded to it, is COVID and the pandemic over the last 2 years. You know, I'm just curious at the level of participation and any issues you had with the vaccine mandate, you know, that was issued by the city, and how many, you know, the percentage of fire department personnel that complied and or had exemptions, and then how many resignations that you had that may have taken place as a result of reacting to the mandate.
That's a great question, Stefan. That's 2 years, I think, that we all want to look back on many years from now and say, wow, how did we navigate those waters? As far as the vaccination mandate, Prior to the mandate, we were close to 90% already vaccinated, fully vaccinated on our job. So we're very outward facing. We interact with the public in very intimate settings. I mean, we're in people's homes. We're treating people, day in and day out, 300 to 400 times a day. So I think we had a different approach on that. We were trying to protect ourselves, but more so, I think, thinking of the citizens we serve. How can we better protect you? So I'm very proud of the aspect of that, that compliance before it was even mandated. Another thing that I'm very proud of is, we went above and beyond to make sure that we could help the communities by administering vaccinations. So we reached out to Denver Health and said, hey, we want to help. Can you train us and allow us to administer these vaccinations? So we trained our entire job, and we were working with city council. We were working with different neighborhood organizations and different people in the community to say, how can we help you out? And we would go and actually volunteer. And we were volunteering administering vaccinations. We had people that were going to the Pepsi Center helping vaccinations. So we really are a significant partner in the community. We had about 100-ish people that had an exemption. They did not want to get the vaccination, so they applied for an exemption. Most of them were religious based. As far as loss, we had, as far as I'm aware of, and please jump in and clarify, you know better than I, but to my knowledge, we had 3 people resign because of them not wanting to get the vaccination nor follow the mandate as far as an exemption. So we lost 3 people that I'm aware of. Out of 1,072 people, I don't think that's significant. Obviously, I put high importance on everybody. I value everyone on our department, and I don't want to lose anybody. However, in the end, I feel for what we dealt with as a community and as a country and as a city, losing 3 people, I think we weathered the storm very well. Did that clarify the questions? Did that answer for you?
That did answer my question. Thank you.
Mike.
You're muted.
I think it might be us.
Other board member questions?
No,
is
we
it
can't
us?
hear anybody.
No,
Karen,
We
Larry,
can't hear
Katina?
anybody. Give us a
Oh.
second here. Go ahead. We just lost everyone, so we're going to try to figure this out.
That's okay. Can you hear us now?
Did someone say something on the other side?
Can someone talk so we can do a
We
check?
can hear you. Can you hear us?
We're gonna, is it okay if we log out and then log back in? We'll try to just reset.
That's great. Thank you. While they're resetting, Intermonitor, is there anything you would need to cover in the public forum?
I have some things to update on, but they're regarding pending investigations.
Okay. When we're ready, then we will seek adjournment to executive session. All right, we'll wait for them to come on. I have a few more questions. Do other board members have additional questions? Okay. I'll wrap mine up quick then. All right. And then Daniel, is there anything else that we need to cover? Karen, go ahead.
I'm not sure number 6 was answered on the
Okay.
list of questions.
I think they went through it really quick, but if there's additional follow-ups you want, feel free to ask.
Okay.
Can you all hear us now?
We can probably hear him through here for now.
Can you try it again? We can.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Okay.
lost our big speaker, but we could hear you on the TV. Sorry about that.
No worries. It's
Love
constant in this
technology.
environment. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I think, Karen, would you like to ask a question?
Sure. And forgive me if you went through this, answered this question. I guess I didn't hear it. Is the complaint and or discipline process different for arson investigators? And if so, how?
Okay, yeah, I guess I didn't really fully answer that question. So say theoretically there was a complaint against a fire investigator Like I said, typically that would come through the independent monitor. If it didn't, we would have them on board right away. So the investigation would stay the same itself in terms of who investigates it. It would be internal affairs, but with the guidance again, with the city attorney, EDOS or Director of Safety's office, and then also independent monitor. Say theoretically that resulted in some sort of discipline, then they would go through the same process that we have in the Denver Fire Department, which involves conduct review board, pre-disciplinary meeting, our same process. So the process would be Denver Fire Department under the disciplinary matrix, but independent monitor would be in the investigation component of that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have two questions. Both are perhaps big. So the first question is, you mentioned that you have your own dispatch. Can you speak a little bit about how that works? If I call 911, how does it know to go to fire versus anybody else? And then the second question is, can you talk a little bit more specifically about your role in engaging with our unhoused neighbors in Denver? And, you know, are you participating in the sweeps that the city is doing to, you know, tear down encampments? You know, what's your day-to-day role with our neighbors experiencing homelessness?
Both great questions. The 911 dispatch, when anyone calls 911, that goes to a 911 emergency dispatcher in our 911 center. And at the exact same time that they're typing notes from the caller, that is live. So the 911, I'm sorry, the fire dispatchers are seeing what's being typed. The police dispatchers are seeing what's typed, and the paramedics. As they're continuing to type, they're going through a QA/QI, and they're asking specific questions to see which direction to push this call. As they gather the information, they're with specific questioning. If it is a fire-related call, it'll go right to our fire 911 dispatchers, and then they can start taking more notes. And while they're doing that, they can start dispatching our apparatus at the exact same time. So it's a very robust program. I think it works very, very well. And the director, Andrew Demeron's been on board for about a year, and he's doing a phenomenal job up there. He's really thinking outside the box. He's looking at what's working well across the country, not just looking at the successes we've had as a department or a city in Denver, but what's working well in other metro cities that we can leverage and build upon. So as that concurrent call is happening, our 911 dispatchers are then dispatching our Denver Fire apparatus. And as they're going to the call, they're typing in notes continuously on if it may come in as a cardiac arrest. But then as we're driving to the call, it may be like CPR is in progress or it's not in progress. There's an AED on site or there's not. So it really paints that picture. So as we're driving to that call, we know exactly what we're dealing with. And when we get off that rig, how to best present and assist that person in need. Does that answer your question on the 911 side? As far as our unhoused neighbors, this is something that, we are part of each and every day. We look through that lens of compassion, that lens of humanity, if you will, and realize that everyone needs to be treated with dignity and respect. And as our firefighters are out there, we respond on those that are unhoused all the time. But when we arrive on scene, sometimes, we will throw a blanket on them and we'll call 911 because they need to go to a hospital. They need medical help. Maybe they need help to get to a shelter. So we'll ask those types of questions. And prior to the 911 call, what we've been doing that we participated in for almost a year was we were out in the community. We were setting 4 to 5 people that were off duty, that were working in a capacity partnered with a police officer and someone from Human Services. And they would go out and in certain areas, they would talk to people and see if they could help get them housed, see if they could get them the assistance that they needed. Maybe there was a dependency issue. Maybe they didn't know where to go to. So we would ask those questions and get them that help that they needed. As far as cleanups now, we are involved with the cleanups, but we're involved, I don't think in the aspect that you would think. We look more through that lens of safety. And there's a lot of propane that are at a lot of these camps. And those are obviously very, very volatile. They can be very explosive. Sometimes there's butane and other types of compressed gases. Even, sometimes there's some sort of drug making that's taking place at some of these places. And that could make for some sort of a hazmat response. So when we're responding to these cleanups, we're looking again at propane. We're looking at things that could harm the community and harm the people that are within those camps. And working with the director's office and host and other agencies, to see what we can do to help them. But again, just to clarify, we're looking at the risk hazards. We're looking at the compressed gases, the potential hazmats and things such as that. Did that answer your question, Julia?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. I think that's all the questions I had. Other board member questions? Go ahead, Larry.
Just in addition to Julie's question in regard to the interaction with homeless folks, does Denver Fire do anything with administering naloxone and Narcan and dealing with overdoses as being one of the first responders?
Yes, Larry, that's a great question. And to answer your question, yes, we do. So we do carry those, and we do administer those on those instances where people do overdose on a narcotic.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Julia.
And unfortunately, that it seems to be getting a little bit worse. There's a lot of dependency on the streets. There's a lot of things going on now with different opioids and methamphetamine and different things, but it's something that we're always cautious with. And if we're very good at making those judgment calls, and if we can save that life, if someone's in respiratory distress, we'll absolutely deliver that immediately to bring them back.
Thanks, that's very helpful. The data I've seen suggests it's getting a lot worse and fast. So certainly a community concern there. Any other questions from board members? Go ahead, Karen. You're on mute.
Do you use body worn cameras?
That's a great question, Karen. And to answer your question, no, we don't. As firefighters, we don't have any types of cameras that we take on any types of scenes. When our arson investigators are on scene of an arson, they do carry cameras to record the scenes, but I'm not the expert in that. I'm going to turn that question over to Chief Vredenberg, and she could expand on that a little bit.
Right. So when that mandate came out, Fire Investigations Unit explored that to see if we would be required, along with Denver Police, to have to use the body-worn cameras. And the conclusion after discussing it with City Attorney's Office was that Fire Investigation Unit functions as a detective, and other components to it that made it so that the investigators would not be part of that mandate requiring body-worn cameras. A lot of it had to do with the fact that they're functioning as a detective, not necessarily as a patrol officer.
On those scenes, just to expand a little bit, police are on most fires with us. So there are body cameras on site of fires. Also, sometimes on incidents that involve violence, if it's a shooting or a stabbing or something, obviously police is on site. But they're obviously wearing cameras. But again, to answer your question directly, the Denver Fire Department does not wear any body cameras.
And then maybe to piggyback one other addition to that, when you look at what a fire investigator does when they're on scene, a lot of it has to do with finding origin and cause. In fact, around 70% of our fires annually are really more cases that are not related to the act of arson. It's other types of fires. So when they're going into a fire scene, they're going inside with all their respirators, protective gear on in, trying to dig a scene to find origin and cause. So there are some also limitations related to them being inside a scene digging, as opposed to contacts, as much as you would think from a patrol officer. It's a little different.
Okay.
Thank you for that question.
I do have one final question. As we think about the impacts of the Marshall Fire on the broader metro area, it's a good example of the sort of urban wild interface and the interaction between, wildlands and dense development. I wonder, and perhaps this is an opportunity for you to do a PSA, but, are there parts of the city that are more concerning to you with regard to that interface? And what might we understand from that?
Absolutely. And again, another great question. This is something that we were actually been working on for 2 months now, preparing and gathering a lot of documentation. We've reached out to the United States Fire Administration, got a lot of data and a lot of materials to hand out from them. We've been in contact with other agencies that are truly on that urban interface, right on the mountain, if you will. And we've just built about a 20-page PowerPoint that we're going to be posting on our website. So anyone that wants to go to the Denver Fire website can ask, that has questions. Hopefully those answers are there. How do we respond? What's a bug bag? What do I do when I leave my house? What can I do to protect my valuables? More importantly, what can I do to protect myself and my loved ones? And this is something that we had some questions from council members. So we are in the process of reaching out to city council, and we are hoping to deliver these in person. If there's RNOs or anyone that wants to hear from us, we love these opportunities to get a chance to share a little bit about our department, but also how we are prepared as an agency. We do have over 200 people that are wildland trained. We do have brush trucks. We've got great relationships with surrounding agencies. And we would be remiss if we didn't say, yeah, there's some threat in Denver. There's some large areas, especially northeast. It doesn't take much for wind and someone to be careless, and all of a sudden that fire's running rampant. Even northwest Denver, just to the west of Willis Case Golf Course, there's a lot of areas that are considered natural vegetation that border houses, and it's on the bottom of a hillside. So there's absolute threats everywhere. We recognize that. So that is something that I feel we owe to the citizens. There's a lot of angst from what happened in Marshall. And if it could happen there, it can absolutely happen everywhere. So this is something that we're very cognizant of, that we will be prepared for, and hopefully in the near future have the opportunity to deliver that to anyone that is asking for assistance or that education. Great question.
Thanks so much for that. Go ahead, Stefan.
Just wanted to make a request. Chief, can you get the PowerPoint that you all used today that was so helpful to give us an overview of your operations and also your IA process? Can you provide that to our administrator, Daniel Van Scooten, just so we have it for
Yes,
reference
sir.
and as part of our record?
Absolutely. We'll communicate with Daniel after this, and I'll find out who the best is to send that information to. And once we get that done, if you like, also, I'd be more than happy to send you that PowerPoint for the wildland stuff.
That'd be great too. Yep.
Yes.
We'd appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think my hope is to have you back more frequently than at least 2 years I've been on the board. So we don't have so much catching up to do. Really appreciate your time today, and thank you for the work you do for the city and for answering all of our questions. We look forward to continuing the discussion. So really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, we
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to work for each and every one of you and serve you in this capacity. So appreciate the opportunity to share all the things that we're working on.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So with that, I don't believe the board has additional matters to discuss in public, but in light of the fact that we have ongoing investigations to discuss with the monitor, may I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
Don't move for that purpose.
Second.
Great. In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion passes, and I will see you over there. Thank you so much. Appreciate everyone's attendance at the meeting today.